doesn't matter how you estimate if you're only person in the company and are never going to have anyone else in the company. You just because you get a feel for it and you sell out of your gut, and that works for a lot of people. If you ever want to not be the only person who can do that, then you have to systematize it somehow. You have to come up with a system that you can explain to someone in less than a lifetime, to be able to understand how they can go out and quickly produce an estimate like you used to do in your head, but with a system that allows them to actually do it based on something other than a gut feel.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. What's up, everybody? Mike Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you're listening to another episode of the Painter Growth Podcast. And a special episode today. I have the CEO and founder of Estimate Rocket, Tom Droste. And Estimate Rocket, as you guys may or may not know, one of the leading estimating and quoting softwares out there. Stoked to learn a little bit about that today, but more than that, as you guys know, we always try to provide you as much value, actionable insights today, and that you will get lots of. So, Tom, excited to have you, man.
Great to be here, Mike. Always looking forward to chats about how we can help our groups do better and
Absolutely.
Work less.
Yeah, and absolutely. Your name, at least your company's name, comes up a lot in the realm
Sure.
now when people are talking about quoting softwares and estimating. So let's not even talk about that first, but just give me the quick synopsis. How did you end up, you have an accounting background, how did you end up starting a quoting software? Or I don't know, is that how you classify it, a quoting software?
Yeah, it's actually a lot more. It started as an estimating system about 7 years ago. It's really now an end-to-end, from sales, estimating and sales process through job costing and project management and scheduling through invoicing. So it's really kind of an end-to-end solution. But we did start with estimating. That's the moniker we ended up with there when we started.
Got a little pigeonholed there.
Yeah, but it's okay. I get an opportunity to tell people, hey, it's not just estimating. But It was one of those. The way I got here was through many moons ago. I was working as a staff accountant out of college, and it was okay. I enjoyed the technical aspects of accounting, but it was really kind of dull stuff, and it wasn't necessarily what I wanted. My goal at the time was to have my own business someday.
Who could have guessed
what it was going to be?
Accounting would be dull.
Yeah. My dad was a structural engineer, so he'd been in the construction field for his life, really. And one day I had this epiphany at work, and I looked out and I saw my boss's head and my boss's boss's head and my boss's 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 head all lined up in a row. And the guy at the end was really, really old. And I said, I don't want to be that old when I get there. So I quit my job as an accountant, and I'd had some experiences with computers in the accounting job that were really fun and sparking, and quit my job and went to work at a computer store. My father-in-law thought I was an absolute nut, leaving this great, high-paying job with benefits and a future, and going to a computer store. But then I started programming and just helping people solve their business problems.
Amazing. And then how did that turn into Estimate Rocket?
Yeah. So I had another software company that went very well, but sort of ran its course. And I started Logical Engine, which is the creator of Estimate Rocket. Again, because I saw this need this was probably 9 years ago before. And literally I did a lot of searching, and there was nothing for this field. I mean, there was virtually nothing. So I did some consulting. We created an estimating program for concrete lifting companies. And the key was that it knew how the concrete lifters did their production, and understood if they put in the measurements. I tell them how much polyurethane they need to do the concrete lifting and how long it's going to take. And so that was my first exposure to production rates. And it spawned from there into where we are today with, quite a few thousand users and in a lot of different trades. Painting is our biggest customer base, but we serve a lot of different trades.
Awesome. No, that's cool. So where I wanted to guide this conversation today, I think is really valuable because in many of the subsequent episodes that we've recorded, we've talked about sales reps and sales is
Sure.
obviously so important. And one thing Estimate Rocket does is what you call production rates. We've
Mhm.
had drip jobs on here before, and they just released their
Sure.
production rates. But I mean, tell me first, why do you feel it's important for a company like a painting company to use production rates in quoting? Actually, what is
Uh,
production rates first?
all right. So a production rate is simply a unit-based pricing. It's a metric-based pricing. It's not just selling something by the hour. It's trying to calculate how many hours the thing is going to take so that you know how many hours it's going to take and can figure out an appropriate price based on how much time it's going to take. Most of our customers sell their fundamental product is hours. So it's really important that they have a feeling for, how many hours something's going to take. Uh, it doesn't matter how you estimate if you're only person in the company and are never going to have anyone else in the company. You just because you get a feel for it and you sell out of your gut, and that works for a lot of people. If you ever want to not be the only person who can do that, then you have to systematize it somehow. You have to come up with a system that you can explain to someone in less than a lifetime to be able to understand how they can go out and quickly produce an estimate like you used to do in your head, but with a system that allows them to actually do it based on something other than a gut feel. And generally speaking, it boils down to measuring, counting, and observing. Observing is that's the wild card. That's the one that's not necessarily in the book, but there are ways to account for that even in your production rates. So that was probably a long explanation of production rate, but it's basic. But it boils down to a unit price for the thing that you're measuring that's important, and in most cases that's hours.
Okay. So you go into a paint job, you go into a quote, right? Say you're having the homeowner,
Yep.
they want a full interior repaint,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Typical contractor walks in, eyeballs it. I can probably have two guys, 2 weeks, where
Hmm.
whatever it is, 2,000, 4,000 a week, we'll do $8,000. We'll go in at 8,000, right? We can
Right.
do it for 7,500 if you book today, right? That's how a
Yeah.
lot of people quote.
Yes.
So how would that same estimate be with production rates?
With production rates, you have to measure something. Now, there are again a lot of ways to do this. The classic way is you measure square feet, you count windows and doors, you measure running length of trim areas, and each of those has a production rate, which is simply a factor that says for every foot of this, or every square foot of this, or every count of this is how long it takes to do, and this is how much material it's going to require to accomplish that. So now, as the estimator, you still need to go in and measure and count, which is more than your predecessor did, because he just went in and eyeballed it and figured, oh yeah, this is a $20,000 job. And there's a lot of people successful with that, but it's really hard to grow when that's your methodology,
Yeah.
because you can't teach someone that, and you don't want to rely necessarily on their judgment being like your judgment. That's a pretty big leap.
Yeah, if you try, especially
So
if you're trying to scale and make sure, like, stabilize your margins, that's a dangerous game to play.
exactly, yeah. So that's the other thing that we do that's really, I think, is really critical is we produce a costed estimate. We tell you what the price should be, but we also tell you what your your going in gross profit is going to be. So when you're done with your proposal, when you're done with your estimate, not only do you have the price that you're going to tell the customer, but you also have your gross margin. So okay, if you do this per what you say you can do with the production rates, this is what your your likely outcome will be from a profitability standpoint. And that to me is the key. And that's the consistency that you were just talking about, knowing where you're going to stand when it's done. It's one thing to say, I want to make $20,000. But $20,000 might not even be close to what you need, because this house isn't a $20,000 house. This is a $40,000 house, and you're not going to get out of there for less and have a happy customer.
But if you followed production rates and accounted for every linear foot of baseboard, every square foot of wall, you shouldn't get hit by those surprises.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Question on the
Now,
job costing.
There's
there.
also,
So if you sorry, cut you off. It said that it'll show you the gross margin. And before we kind of went on, you said that Estimate Rocket also does things around job costing. So say we have the Smith house and it says, we have an estimated 50% gross margin on this. Will that all aggregate somewhere where we can see line by line all of the jobs we've done, what our estimated or projected gross profit was, and then what our actual gross profit was, and then variance?
Yeah. And by estimator and salesperson. So you can have a great conversation both during the project and when it completes about, hey, we only made a 30% margin on this project. Our target was 45 or 50 or whatever it was. And right after the project, you can have that conversation with the appropriate people, the ones that worked on it, and find out, hey, what went wrong? Was this an estimator thing where you missed some, big piece of the puzzle, or some challenge that was there? Or ask the crew, did you have your best guy sick, or, what happened? And again, it's not necessarily to beat anybody up. It's to figure out what happened so that we can hopefully prevent that from happening in the future. But you have that tool of what we thought it was going to be and what it actually was.
Basically, it gives you the data to allow yourself to make decisions instead of making decisions blind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. At a level that can really help you. Because again, knowing, I made my sales number, but why didn't I end up with any money in the bank?
Yeah. I mean, one thing an objection that I hear sometimes is why people don't want to use production rates. Well, actually, two objections that I hear.
Mm-hmm.
One is that they don't really know where to get started when it comes to rates, like how much should I charge per linear foot for this, that, another thing. And the other thing is, this is going to take a lot more time for my estimates. Right now, my estimates take 30 minutes. It sounds like this is going to take a lot longer.
Right. So to the last complaint, that is true, but you're going to be able to have someone doing it that isn't you. That's the bonus. And that's a lot of the reasoning behind systematizing it. However you systematize it, is to allow you to go and do other things that your business needs you to be doing, not estimating. And that's where you get to a certain growth level, and you might not even need to add a salesperson. You might need to add an estimator so you can sell and the estimator can do the estimates, because they might take a little longer than. But again, you say that it's going to take longer, and yes, because you're going to go look at all the different things you're going to do. And when you're out there bidding that project with your 20 years of knowledge, it happens quickly. But because you've got that experience and knowledge, you're like walking through the house and you're observing things. So you're like, in your brain, you're going, I could add a day for that, add a day for that one. That you wouldn't do if you didn't have that experience, because you say, oh, this is just a normal house. It's got 10 rooms, and that's how we bid it. Well, it's got 10 rooms, but they all have 15-foot ceilings, or those things that you observe if when you go and walk around it.
Yeah.
On the first side, what was the first one? So much fun.
Not knowing where to start with production rates.
Yes. The good news is, as painters, you actually have access to production rates from the PCA. And are they going to end up being your exact production rates? No. Are they going to be usable and help you, give you something to work from? Absolutely. And that can happen pretty quickly. The other thing that I tell people is, like, when we deliver Estimate Rocket to a painting company, we give you a set of templates that have production rates in them that are based on our experience over the years and based on originally on the PCA information. And what I tell people to do is do a quote, do this quote the way you would do it, or take a quote that you did recently and liked, and then measure and count it into Estimate Rocket if you can, and see what the difference is. Because what I found is most of the time, if they did a good estimate and they set their labor rate in Estimate Rocket, that's the one piece that you need to get in. I think we default to $50 an hour, but if you're in a place where you're charging 75, you got to adjust that one number and see where it falls. Because if you're really good, you're probably going to fall really closely to what your gut estimate was. If not, then you got to start looking at, why is it different? And that process just by itself can be the education to get you to realize, oh man, I've been undercharging for that, or I'm out of touch with my market, and I really a while ago should have changed, another 20% for that in this particular area, or whatever those dynamics are.
Yeah.
So it is hard, but we give a lot of help to our customers to get going with it and support them through it.
No, that's good. That's good. In business, there's a certain level of risk. And so doing a job, with the new quoting system, finishing it, and then looking at your numbers to see what you need to adjust moving forward, like it's all kind of part of the game too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we were looking. You'd actually probably be happy to hear this. Yesterday on our group call, we did. I put together some financial training, some intro to finance 101 type stuff, and we were looking at clients' financial statements. We were looking at balance sheet, P&L, cash flow, and one of the things that we were looking at was just like aggregate on the P&L revenue, and then variable costs. So what your gross margin was, what their gross margin was, and what their fixed expense percentage was. And so he was having kind of he saw a ton of growth, but he was still having trouble. So what was going on? It turns out that his variable costs were actually like 72%, right? Where we want that closer to 50%. So, this was not job by job. This was, for the whole month, but at least aggregate, let's go look. Now we know where to start diving into the business.
Yeah. We did as one of our lead magnets, we did it. I created this, I call it the what if spreadsheet. And basically it's got a whole bunch of inputs, like your current labor rate, your current number of of production people, the average cost of a production person, do you give vacation or not? There's probably like 8 or 9 variables that you put in that should be relatively common knowledge. And it basically comes down and comes out and says, hey, here's your potential revenue if you're billing these folks out at the amount of hours that you say you're going to bill them out. And it gives you your total revenue potential. But then it also has an overhead section. And when I was doing the presentation, one of the guys came up to me after. He says, I really thank you. That was really great. He said, not about the production stuff at the top, which I thought was the cool stuff. He said, but I realized my overhead is way, way too high. He said, I got a sales problem. I got way more overhead than I can, because he said, all my numbers are lining up perfectly. They're making sense. And he said, overhead. Ooh, look at that line. So it's kind of fun stuff. But when you get that data and information and you can see it, it's game changer, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you recommend, what are the important numbers for a painting contractor to look at in their business, like as they bring on a sales rep, to make sure that, things are growing healthily?
Sure. Prior, when you're getting ready to do that, I think you have to look at one of my other favorite topics, which is backlog. You have to have ramped up enough sales to be able to afford this person within a certain time period. Now, if you got a chunk of cash in the bank and you're ready to float it, that's fine. But if that's your first non-production hire that you're making, you got to make sure that you can afford that person. And from my perspective, any of those decisions are made easier when you've got a decent backlog to support it. With the backlog, I can pay this person for some period of time until they become productive and start contributing to the bottom line.
Like, do you have recommended models for sales reps?
I don't actually. I don't. So somebody asked me that. Also asked me that recently too. I will before too long.
Yeah.
They, and I've heard from different. I have heard some things. I was talking with Nick Slavic recently, and he was, he had some numbers, but then I talked to some other guys, and their numbers are pretty different. And so it's one of those things that kind of varies across the board, and it does matter what your like your operating cash position is. I do think that's a big factor, because if you're tight operating cash wise, then you have to be careful in how you make those decisions. If
Mhm.
you've got flexibility, if you're an established company and now you're at, oh wow, we're doing great, hey, let's add a few people to ramp this thing up more. That's a little bit different decision, because you're not like, oh crap, if this guy doesn't produce in a month, we're going to have to let him go. It makes that different decision if you've got the capital to support that over a little bit more runway. So,
Totally.
but I don't have a good hard fast rule for that. I've heard anywhere from, a good salesperson can produce anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million
Yeah.
in residential repaint situation. But again, that all depends upon how your lead funnel is set up, and are you getting leads? You just don't have anyone to service them, and there's a whole boatload of variables there.
Yeah, average job size, what types of projects you've been taking
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
time of year, things like that.
right.
So other than that, like backlog, I mean, actually, how would you
Yeah,
define backlog? Backlog in terms of like number of leads and estimates that you have, or like how much work you actually have booked?
number of projects and value accepted by the customer, by a potential customer.
Okay, that you
So
have kind of like booked
once
out in the future.
they've signed off, we haven't necessarily even scheduled it yet, or we scheduled it out into the future, but the customer has accepted based on whatever terms you had told them, in terms of, hey, we can't do this for 2 months or a month or whatever.
Sure.
um, I mean, I personally, I don't, and I used to, sell consulting services. That's, way back when, that was kind of how I got started. And I mean, I never felt comfortable without 3 months worth of work out in front of me. I mean, it just didn't. Now, painting is a little bit different. It's, in some respects, it's, oh, I want it now, or I'm going to find someone else to do it right now. But I always think that there's always a mix of people that are like, you're good. I've heard you have a great reputation. I'm okay waiting a month for this. This isn't the painting emergency. This is just, I want to get this room finished off. So yeah, you're not going to get everybody, but I do think that you can get enough to build that backlog up, and it just gives you that, especially when you're small, it gives you that cushion to say, yeah, okay, I got this, because I've got that cushion.
How about keeping those jobs organized? I mean, we have some like production
Mm,
schedule planner templates and things like that, but like how do
yeah.
you recommend keeping if you have, 30 jobs booked out in the future? How do you keep that
hmm
organized?
Yeah. Yeah, so you can actually, if you do have a tentative date for it, and even if it's just tentative, in Estimate Rocket, you can just put them on the schedule. So you can actually lay them out in the calendar. So as you're looking at the calendar, you can see all the work and where it's been slotted in. You can also leave it in a needs to be scheduled category, where you can see all of those too. But if you have a ballpark where you're going to put it there, and let communicate with the customer, because then you see it, and you know what you've got in the time frame, and I think it makes it a little bit easier, again, to do your planning and know, okay, wow, I am booked, because you can have a number of projects accepted and not scheduled, and know what that total is. That's good. But to me, it's even better when you see how it plots out over the next, because you might have somebody who said, hey, I don't want to do this until 6 months from now. And that one isn't necessarily going to help you in that short range time. But once you get them
Mhm.
calendared out, you really get a good picture of it.
And does that work with multiple crews and
Sure.
stuff?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
pretty easy to see holes in the schedule and move stuff around.
Exactly. Yeah. Very easy to drag the schedule events around.
All right. So we have a company. We have a couple of crews. We're booked out for a couple months now. We want to bring on a sales rep.
Yep.
What else should we be thinking about?
I think the biggest first decision is, do you want a sales rep, or do you want an estimator? Because I think an estimator, first of all, probably is going to be a little less expensive than a salesperson. And if you're still fully engaged in the sales process, are you ready to give that? Are you ready to, can you move out of that position? Are you still going to have to do that and the estimating and the proposals?
I think for our
So
client,
that's the first decision.
for clarity for our client, for most of the people listening, it's going to be the same thing. So an estimator and salesperson.
Okay.
So we want to
Okay.
get someone who's going to do the estimate, go to the homeowner's house, get the pricing, and then sell the job on the
Got it.
spot.
And can close the deal. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. So again, it's kind of a comfort level thing in terms of how months out you do, how many months you need to be out to do that. That's a hard, like, I have a high tolerance for pain with that stuff. So I might do it with a little less backlog than someone else, but someone else might be, geez, I just don't want to do that until I have 3 months out there because, they're risk averse enough that they don't want to take that leap. And I know that's a barrier, right? You got to take the risk to get the rewards. So that's where you come in to let them, help them with where they're at and how their numbers are flowing and if they're ready for that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said before, you definitely have to be willing to take a little bit of risk when it comes to bringing on a sales
Right.
rep, because then they're not going to be able to sell as good as you at the beginning, or ever.
Right.
And you just got to be okay with that and kind of work to
Right.
develop them.
I would also say number of leads you've got I talked about backlog, but I also think you got to have you got to have enough. If you've got enough inbound leads that you just can't service them, that's a little different too. So if you've got production capacity that's not used, and you've got an overwhelming number of you got people coming that you're not even able to get back to, that makes that decision a little bit easier too. So,
Mhm.
in partial answer, but it is one of those. There's never enough data to support the decision things.
Yeah, and you just got to choose. You also have to have a good kind of marketing program and be willing and able
Right.
to increase your spend on all of your marketing channels to keep your new sales rep
Yeah.
fed.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So let's take a little left turn here. What are some of the, how do I want to phrase this? What are some of the not strangest, but most surprising things that you've learned now working with multiple thousand contractors over the last few years?
Hmm. Hmm. That's an interesting question. Um.
Pretty broad on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. We've learned a lot. I've learned that communications is probably one of their biggest shortcomings, and is, I'm guessing, with customers as well as with people they interact with. We have some folks who are a little gruff when they're messaging in and have a problem. We're trying to help them out, but um, so and I also know that they're getting beat up in the field all the time. Their customers are beating the crap out of them. And this is actually a conversation I have with our team on a regular basis. Look, the reason they're upset is because they just got the crap kicked out of them by their customer, and they're, looking for help to fix the problem. So nothing surprises me anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we know that, like, in general, contractors are very poor communicators when it comes to their
Yeah,
clients, right?
right.
So it's like it's such a low hanging fruit just to like be a better communicator, and that
Yeah,
immediately sets you apart.
yeah. It's a not it, and I know this because I suffered it too when that was my sales model. That they're afraid to get back to someone with bad news, so they don't get back to them at all. And I think that's probably the biggest, and now to me, most surprising, because I did learn that fairly early on. Just call them back and say, hey, I can't do this yet, or I'm delayed, because then they hear from you. Because if they don't
Mhm.
hear from you, A, they're going to go somewhere else, and B, they're going to think you're a jerk because you didn't get back to them. So that's one of the big ones.
Like over communicate every chance that you can, even if you think
Yeah,
it's bored, just like keep telling, keep
yeah.
updating them.
Yeah, because they want to not. Otherwise they think you've just completely forgotten about them. And the fact is, you're probably thinking about them every single day. Let them know that you're thinking about them, because at least that shows that you care, and and it's important to you, even if you can't get to it yet.
So
So
I'm
that's a
asking
big
these
one.
questions without knowing the answers, legitimately, but does
Sure.
Estimate Rocket provide any sort of assistance with customer communication?
We do. So we provide. We do have automated follow-ups built in. And so what happens is at every stage of the project, from not just at the sales cycle, but when you get into the pre-scheduling and you've scheduled but haven't done it yet, and there's an opportunity, and we supply them. You can alter them and change them if you want. Drip campaign, basically, to let them, to communicate whatever you need to. Hey, it's time, we're going to schedule you in the next few days, or we haven't heard back from you to schedule. Are you ready to schedule your project? Those kinds of things. So at least they're getting pinged on a regular basis, to hear that.
So it has like kind of
We also try
CRM
to,
style like stages where it's like we have like new lead, estimate,
yep,
schedule. Okay.
yeah, exactly. And that's it. That, there's new lead, there's schedule estimate, there's follow up on once the estimate's complete, follow up on the proposal. That's usually the longest, drip. And then there's a work pre-scheduled work. Work has been scheduled. Work is complete. Invoice is paid. It's just the whole series,
Okay.
but
Any of
all the
those
major steps.
customizable emails, are those customizable?
All of them are customizable,
Okay.
from the verbiage as well as the number of communications. So you want
Mhm.
to communicate, we try to do it at a reasonable pace. But you can, depending upon your business, you might
Yeah.
want more in a shorter period of time or fewer in a longer period of time. So
Does it do text messages too, or just email?
does text messages as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that through like Twilio? Like you have to just get like an internet phone number and it'll come from that?
Yeah. Actually, we supply that. So it's built into Estimate Rocket, but it is
Okay.
actually through Twilio. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and two ways so the client can text back in and you can probably see it on the app.
Yeah, so what we do is we bring it into the app. So when we text messaging is generally gives them a notification and a link to the customer portal. And
Yeah.
on the customer portal, they can message back and forth between you and the customer. That way we've got, we're very big on having all the documentation for the project in the project so you can
Yeah.
see everything.
Yeah, obviously, people need the right expectations. You're not going to be able to send an outbound text from your phone through Estimate Rocket.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
texting online through online software doesn't quite work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of them, I mean, the problem is as you grow, you're like, I don't want all these texts on my on my personal phone. This is business stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't really want that there anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have the automated text, automated emails, kind of support with the production rates, job costing. What are kind of the other like
Yeah.
big feature pillars that I'm kind of missing here?
Sure. So our the way we keep project documentation, I think, is a big thing for us. Everything is in one place. So like there's a project screen, and the project screen is where you live. It has everything, and there's easy ways to segment it if you want to just look at one section or the other section. But in one place, you can scroll down and you can see everything about that project. You can see the line items, you see the contact information, you see emails that are sent out, you see their proposals, you see payments, you see photos, you see notes. Everything is just in one place. So when people are looking for something or trying, your admin is trying to follow up on something, everything's right there in that one place. And you can search on virtually anything to find a project, like part of a phone number, part of a street, part of a name and part of a street, or just about anything will get you your project. So it's not like you got to
A
know
little a little
exactly
better
what you're.
than using Google Drive.
Little better than Google. Is Google Drive not a search nightmare? Like you would
Yeah.
think Google could have done a better job at that.
Yeah, you get
Well,
everything that's ever been shared with you and yeah.
it is crazy. I totally agree. My Google Doc names have like 20 words in them, so that at least there's some word I'll remember for what's in that document, and it'll come up.
Maybe this is like a pedantic
Yeah,
question.
pedantic.
But how was it difficult to program a good search feature?
Yeah, actually, it was quite complex. It is not a trivial exercise, I will say. And Google search is way better than Google Doc search in my estimation. But It is relatively complex. We have the advantage of of knowing what's there. So that's our big advantage.
I mean, a
Google search
finite.
has to be able to search
You're
on
searching from a finite resource, a small pool.
exactly. I mean, we know what all the fields are that are contained in our project and client tables. So that's kind of the universe where as Google has no idea what you're going to put in and hope to find.
Okay.
So,
I
but
mean, most
it is
people,
a
99%
powerful
of the people listening don't care at all about that, but I dallied a little bit in that. So it's I didn't think that the search function would be an easy thing to get right.
Yeah, it's not. And like you said, if it's a broad text search, that's even harder. I mean, again, we have a fairly limited scope of what we're searching.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
some of
the
some of
biggest
the
client might have 10,000 customer records, so like that's not that big of a data set.
right, yeah. And well, actually, we have some customers with hundreds of thousands of projects. Yeah, uh, they're not huge projects, but there's a
It's a
lot
lot of
of them.
projects.
Like concrete lifting, for example, a lot of
Mhm.
small jobs, but a lot of them. But the SQL engines out there now are just they're really pretty amazing, I have to say,
Yeah,
and very very efficient. So that makes the job easier, especially with a defined search. With something where what the parameters and limits are for it. So.
totally. So what any other like major segments of Estimate Rocket that I missed? So we talked about CRM,
Yeah,
emails, production rates,
schedule
scheduling,
scheduling's a big, yeah.
taking payments.
Scheduling and to dos. Yeah, we take payments both credit and ACH. We're working on a finance option as well for
Canada
that.
and
That'll be
US.
Canada and US. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. We have a
excellent.
few people in England and Australia and a few other places, but primarily US and
Signing
Canada.
agreements over email, presenting on iPad.
Oh yeah, yes.
Okay, just
For
getting
all,
all the
yeah,
basics, checking them off here. Okay,
yeah, signatures and yeah,
and how much is it? How
change
much is
orders.
it a month for a single user?
So our program is it's $139 a month, and that includes up to 3 users, and then additional users can be bought individually. And
Awesome.
we've sort of wrestled with our price points. It's a challenge because we offer a super high level of service, and we want to do that for everybody. And at 99 or 89 or $79, it's really difficult to
Totally.
keep move the product forward and deliver a high level of service for
I
our
mean, you
customer
definitely
service.
feature rich, right? There's a lot of features there. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if you book one extra job a year from it, it pays for itself.
Oh, unquestionably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot one last time.
Okay.
I try to do this with everyone who has something that they have to offer. What can you offer listeners today as a special kind of listener only, painter growth only listener type of incentive to check it out?
I would do so normally we have a 30-day free trial. And today only I would do an additional 50% off for 3 months.
Okay, so 30-day free trial plus half price for 3 months.
And then 3 months for half price.
Amazing. So you get me that coupon code.
I got to write that down.
I'll put it underneath. I'll put it underneath the video, and we'll have an expired. Yep. We'll keep it active for like a month or something like that.
Yep.
And look, you have to listen to the podcast all the way to the end to get it. Yep. So
I love it.
The diehards.
You can call it Painter Growth 23.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
let it go to the end of January. Let's go to the end of January, and then we'll give some urgency to people.
I got it. I'm there.
Well, hey Tom, this is awesome. Go ahead.
They just have to message in when they get to the site. Once they sign up, just have a message in and say, "Hey, I'm with Painter Growth 23," and they'll get their coupon applied. So.
Perfect. I had a great conversation, man. I feel like we could go all day. Looks like during our conversation, it already got dark there. So you're on the East Coast. You're in Maine, I think.
We're in just north of Boston, actually, but we're actually really close to Maine, actually.
Yeah. Well,
Maine's only about 25 minutes away. So.
Well, you better get home for dinner. And great chatting with you. Thanks for coming on. And look forward to having you on again.
Likewise. Super. Anytime.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.